A girl bumped into a stranger. He was a millionaire who fell in love instantly. Love can show up when you least expect it. A broke girl riding home on a beat-up bike slams into a total stranger, and later finds out he's a millionaire who can't stop thinking about her. The sun drooped over quiet blocks, washing everything in a soft amber glow, while heavy clouds piled up in the distance like a warning. Nora Ellis leaned into the pedals, jaw tight, the rusty chain rattling with every push. Her breath came sharp and quick. She had stayed late at work again, and if she didn't hurry, her mom would start to worry, and her kid brother Leo would still be waiting for dinner. Wind rushed along the road, spinning dust and dry leaves into small swirls. Nora squinted against it, fingers clamped on the handlebars. The street ahead was almost bare, just a few people moving along the sidewalks. Almost there, she told herself. Just a couple more blocks. Then, bam, her whole body lunged forward as she crashed straight into something or someone. The hit was sudden and hard. The bike tipped, and she slammed on the pavement, pain streaking through her palms and knees as they scraped against rough concrete. A deep voice, edged with irritation, cut into the daze. "Are you blind? Do you even look where we're going?" Nora groaned and pushed herself up. Her hands burned, but she barely felt it. She snapped her head toward the voice and saw a man towering over her, brushing dust from a very expensive suit. He was tall and broad, with sharp features that looked like they belonged on a magazine cover. Dark hair, neatly styled but a little messed from the collision. Piercing blue eyes, narrowed with annoyance, held a focus that made Nora's stomach twist, though she shook it off. Great, just what I need, she thought. Another rich guy with an attitude. She ignored the throbbing in her knee. "Are you serious? You were standing in the middle of the street," she shot back. The man, Gavin Pierce, raised one eyebrow, unimpressed. "I was walking. You, on the other hand, were flying down the road like a maniac." Nora scowled. "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know people in overpriced suits owned the road now." Gavin gave a short, humorless laugh and tugged at his jacket sleeve where a faint tear showed. "Unbelievable," he muttered. Nora brushed dust from her jeans, irritation flaring. She glanced at her bike. One pedal bent, chain off its gear. Perfect. She folded her arms. "Well, thanks for nothing." Gavin stared, as if deciding whether to say more. Annoyance and curiosity mixed on his face. Nora didn't wait. She grabbed the handlebars, muttered under her breath, and walked her bike down the street. He watched her go, shaking his head. Most people tried to flatter him, or backed off when they recognized his presence. But this girl had stared him down like she didn't care who he was. For some reason, that stuck with him. Neither of them knew this was only the start. The apartment was tiny and warm, but to Nora it was home. The wallpaper peeled at the corners, the ceiling light flickered now and then, and the old fridge hummed like it had a mind of its own. She slipped inside and shut the door gently. The space smelled faintly of herbal tea and old furniture. In the dim glow of a single lamp, her mother lay curled on the thrift store couch, a thin blanket over her frail frame. "Mom," Nora said softly. Her mother stirred, offering a small smile. "You're home late again." Nora set down her bag and knelt beside her. "Work ran long. How are you feeling today?" Her mother squeezed her hand. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just tired." Nora knew that wasn't true. The stubborn cough wouldn't go away, and the medical bills kept stacking up. No matter how many hours Nora put in, it never felt like enough. "I'll make you some tea," she said, standing. At the small table across the room, 8-year-old Leo sat over a workbook. He looked up and beamed. "Nora, guess what? I got a gold star on my spelling test." Her exhaustion melted. "That's awesome, buddy. I knew you could do it." His smile faded when he noticed a scrape on her knee. "What happened?" "Just a little spill," she said. No need to mention the rude guy in the fancy suit. It didn't matter. What mattered was keeping the lights on, putting food on the table, and making sure Leo had a shot at something better. She went to the small kitchen and filled the kettle. The pantry was nearly bare again. Some canned goods, half a loaf of bread, a couple packs of instant noodles. Frustration pressed at her chest, but she swallowed it down. One day at a time, she told herself. Just keep going. Late that night, after Leo fell asleep and her mother's breathing settled, Nora sat at the window and stared at the city lights in the distance. Out there, people lived in a different world. People like him, the man she ran into. They ate under crystal chandeliers, wore clothes that cost more than her rent, and never wondered how to pay for the next meal. She didn't hate them. She just wished she could breathe for once. To not wake up each day feeling like she was drowning. But dreams like that were risky. Hope was something she wasn't sure she could afford. A few days later, she stood under a polished sign above glass doors at Red Halston. Even the name sounded expensive. Nora adjusted the strap on her old bag and exhaled slowly. She had never walked into a place like this, let alone imagined working in one. Through the spotless windows, she could see the warm golden lights, perfect tables with gleaming silverware, and servers gliding across the floor like they were born there. Just get through the interview, she told herself. You need this. She pushed open the heavy door and stepped inside. Instantly, she fell out of place. The air smelled like truffle, fresh bread, and something delicate she couldn't name. Staff moved with quiet precision, uniforms crisp, faces calm. The front desk host gave her a quick once-over, unimpressed by Nora's simple clothes. Can I help you? Nora cleared her throat. I'm here for the server position. Nora Ellis. The woman barely nodded and flipped through a clipboard. Down the hall. The manager will see you shortly. Thank you, Nora said, and followed the directions. The hallway was lined with dark that screamed quiet money, and her stomach tightened. At the end, an office door stood slightly open. She knocked twice and walked in and froze. Sitting behind the desk, looking through a file, was the last person she expected. Gavin. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then he looked up and a slow, amused smile pulled at his mouth. Well, he said, setting the file down and leaning back. Didn't expect to see you again. Nora's stomach flipped. You own this place? Gavin laced his fingers and studied her with those sharp blue eyes. That surprises you? Nora clenched her jaw. Yeah, I figured you spent your time standing in streets, waiting for people to run into you. He chuckled, low and rich, which only annoyed her more. Still charming, I see. Nora let out a breath. Look, I didn't know this was your restaurant. I'm just here for the job. He tilted his head. Do you still want it? Every part of her said to turn around and walk out, but she couldn't. She needed the paycheck. She lifted her chin and met his gaze. Yes. His smirk softened into something she couldn't read. He nodded once. Congratulations. You're hired. Nora curled her fingers into fists. Great. A job under him. She promised herself she would keep her distance, no matter what. Nora threw herself into training with a laser focus. She showed up early, stayed late, and worked harder than anyone else on the floor. She learned to carry multiple trays, to read a table before the guests asked, to keep her posture perfect even when her feet screamed. Most of all, she avoided Gavin. She didn't want his pity or his attention, just her hours and her. Pay. At first, he respected the space. He barely spoke to her during service, watching from a distance as she moved through the room with steady, careful steps. But no matter how invisible Nora tried to be, he noticed things. The way she pushed through exhaustion without a word. How she helped co-workers when they were slammed. That quiet strength, like she held up the world and refused to show the strain. It made him curious. It made him want to know more. Slowly, without either of them planning it, the gap between them began to shrink. One evening, while Nora refilled a guest's wine, she felt him nearby. Gavin stood by the bar, eyes on her. She tried to ignore him. Your grip is too tight, he said after a moment. Nora blinked. What? He nodded toward the bottle. You're holding it like you're about to swing it at someone. Loosen your wrists. She pressed her lips together. I know how to pour wine. He raised a brow. You're good. You could be better. She exhaled through her nose. Oh, I'm sorry. Do millionaires coach their servers now? A small smirk touched his mouth. Only the ones who need it. Her grip tightened, and she was about to clap back when he reached for another bottle. Before she could protest, he gently adjusted her wrist. His touch was light but sure, guiding her motion. Nora tensed. The noise of the room faded for a breath. His hands were warm, steady, and standing this close she caught the clean, expensive hint of his cologne. Her breath hitched, but just as quickly he stepped back. There. Better. She swallowed, forced herself to focus, muttered something under her breath, and turned away. His smirk lingered. For the first time since she started, she hadn't walked off the second he spoke to her. He counted it as a win. The weeks settled into an odd rhythm. Gavin didn't intrude on her work, but he was there, noticing small things and stepping in at the edges. When a rude customer snapped at her, he reached the table before Nora could even respond. His words calm but firm as he shut the behavior down. When she struggled with a heavy tray late one night, he was suddenly beside her, taking it without a word. When she looked wrung out after a long shift, a fresh cup of coffee always sat in the break room. No one said who put there, but she knew. Nora told herself she didn't need any of it. Still, she didn't mind as much as she thought she would. One night, closing ran late. Nora bent to pick up a tray, and the room tilted. Her vision blurred and her knees buckled. Strong arms caught her before she hit the floor. "Nora," Gavin said, voice tight with concern. She blinked. Her head rested against his chest. Clean linen and a soft trace of cologne wrapped around her. His hands held her steady. "You need to sit," he said, firm but careful. "I'm fine. Chalit." He didn't buy it. "When did you last eat?" She opened her mouth, then shut it. He exhaled. "That's what I thought." Before she could argue, he guided her to a chair, disappeared into the kitchen, and came back with a plate. Nora glared. "I don't eat," he said, leaving no room for debate. Hunger won. She took a bite. He sat across from her, quiet, watching as she ate. For the first time, she saw something different on his face, something softer, something real. And she wasn't sure she hated it. After that, Gavin was everywhere, not in a loud way, but in a way she couldn't ignore. Sometimes a fresh coffee was waiting at her station before dawn. Sometimes, when the floor got wild, he'd be there a step ahead of her, smoothing things before they turned into a problem. He never made a show of it. He didn't make her feel weak. He just helped. The strangest part was how she stopped fighting it. One evening, she was polishing silver at the bar when he spoke. "You always work harder than everyone else." She glanced up. He leaned against the counter, watching. Nora shrugged. "I have to." He tilted his head. "Why?" She hesitated. "Because if I don't, no one else will." He didn't argue or try to fix it. He just said, "You don't always have to do everything alone." Her hands paused. Their eyes met, blue and steady against warm brown. For the first time, Nora wondered if he meant it. That night, rain hammered the city, pouring in sheets that turned the streets to silver. By the time Nora finished closing, the downpour hadn't let up. She pulled her thin jacket close. "No umbrella." "Great," she muttered. A voice behind her. "Come on." She turned. Gavin stood by a sleek black car, holding the passenger door open. Nora hesitated. "I'm fine." He gave her a look. "Nora, get in." The cold had soaked through her clothes already, and she was too tired to argue. She slid into the seat. He climbed in, shut the door, and sealed out the storm. The car was warm and quiet, rain tapping a soft rhythm on the roof. He switched on the heat. She let out a small sigh as warmth spread through her frozen hands. "Thank you," she said. He glanced over, something unreadable in his eyes. "Anytime." The drive stayed easy and calm. Nora found herself watching him when he wasn't looking. The way his hands rested on the wheel, the small line of his jaw when he focused. Gavin, for his part, couldn't stop noticing the girl beside him, how she gazed out the rain, how the dim light softened her features, how she looked beautiful without trying. He tightened his grip, startled by the rush of feeling. When they reached her building, the rain still pounded. Nora rested a hand on the door handle. "I should go." Gavin nodded, but didn't unlock the doors. She turned back. "Gavin." His face was unreadable. "Stay a second." She blinked. Why? He didn't answer right away. He studied the way damp curls framed her face, the way she hugged her arms like she wasn't used to warmth. Before he could stop himself, he leaned in just a little, enough to see if she would pull away. She didn't. Her breath hitched, fingers clutching her jacket. Then she closed the tiny space between them. The first touch of his mouth was cautious, careful. The second wasn't. It was heat and urgency, and something neither of them was ready to name. When they finally parted, Nora's heart raced. Gavin exhaled and rested his forehead against hers. "Tell me to stop," he whispered. Her hands trembled, but she didn't. She couldn't, because at that moment, she didn't want to. Part to the warmth of that night, clung to Nora for days. She tried convincing herself the kiss was a slip-up, something that happened because the rain and quiet car made everything feel softer than it was. But the truth sat in her chest like a bright ember. Her heart still sped up when she thought about the way Gavin's breath fell against her cheek, the gentle press of his forehead to hers, the simple "tell me to stop" that she couldn't say. Gavin changed too, nothing big or showy, but in small moments she couldn't ignore. His voice was lighter when he spoke to her. His gaze lingered a second longer, not in a way that caged her, but in a way that said he was really seeing her. He kept his distance during service, but somehow he was always near when it mattered, and his presence settled around her like a quiet promise she didn't know what to do with. Nora told herself to focus. Keep your head down, keep the job, keep the bills paid. Don't fall. She had worked too hard to trust a feeling. She had learned that easy hope breaks the loudest. But when she caught him watching her with something gentle in his eyes, it got harder to pretend nothing had changed. Everything split open on an ordinary night. The dinner rush was over, the dining room dim, and the staff in cleanup mode. Nora finished rolling napkins in the back, stretched cracking her knuckles, when low voices drifted from down the hall. Gavin's office door stood a little open. She hadn't meant to pause there. She never poked into other people's business. But then she heard her name. She froze. "Nora," someone said with a smooth, amused drawl. "Come on, Gavin. We both know why you're so attached." The voice belonged to Ryan Dalton, Gavin's friend, one of those polished men who treated life like a game they couldn't lose. Gavin's reply was quiet, controlled. "Ryan, don't start." Ryan laughed softly. "Please, don't act noble. She's struggling. You know it. Sick mom, little brother, bills up to her neck. And you? You're the rich guy swooping in to fix the broken pieces and feel good about yourself." Nora's throat tightened. Ryan kept going, the casual edge in his tone like sandpaper. "Be honest. If she wasn't barely keeping her head above water, would you even look twice?" Silence landed heavy and cold. Nora begged, silently, for Gavin to shut that down. Tell him he was wrong. Say this had nothing to do with pity. Say the kiss meant something real. But Gavin only exhaled. "It's complicated," he said. The words cracked something inside her. The hallway seemed to spin and go narrow at the same time. She didn't stay to hear more. She turned and walked away before the sound of her own heartbeat gave her away. By morning, the decision was made. Nora didn't go in. Not that day. Not the next. Not the one after. Shame mixed with anger until she couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. She ignored calls and texts she couldn't bear to read. If she saw his name on her screen, she turned the phone face down and let it buzz until it went quiet. She told her mother she had picked up odd shifts elsewhere. She told Leo she was handling grown-up stuff. She told herself this was strength. Drawing a line, moving on, not being someone's good deed. The longer she stayed away, the more it hurt. Still, she chose the only safety she trusted, distance. Gavin noticed her absence right away. At first, he guessed she was sick. He left a message asking if she needed anything. Another asking if she'd call him back. The third day without a reply, worry hardened into something sharper. On the fifth day, patience snapped. He drove to her building, rain threatening again, and took the stairs 2 at a time. He knocked, firm but not loud enough to scare the neighbors. "Nora," he called through the door. "Open up." Silence. He stood there with his forehead resting against the frame for a moment, then straightened, jaw tight. "If you're mad at me, fine," he said, not masking the strain in his voice. "But tell me why." Nothing. The quiet on the other side was a wall. He let out a harsh breath. "If this is how you want it." "Okay." He stepped back and left, the sound of his shoes fading down the hall. Inside, Nora's fingers clutched the doorknob. She couldn't bring herself to turn. She stayed like that for a long time, breathing, not moving, willing her chest to stop aching. Every part of her wanted to swing the door open and ask what he meant by complicated. She didn't. She couldn't risk hearing more that would bruise. Gavin wasn't built to accept a mystery he could solve. After days of dragging her name through every thought, he began to dig. It didn't take long. Carla, a server with a good memory and a soft spot for quiet truths, finally told him what she'd seen. She looked upset the night she left. Carla said, eyes apologetic, "I think she was near your office." The door was open. The moment hit him in a rush. Ryan's words, the smirk, the casual slice of his tone. Gavin cursed at himself for not shutting it down fast enough, for the lazy way he'd said, "It's complicated," because he'd been trying not to blow up at his friend. He saw exactly what Nora must have heard. A rich man toying with a good person's life because it made him feel generous. Pity, charity, a project, the opposite of everything he felt. The thought that she believed that made something inside him flare hot and sure. He wasn't going to let the story end there. When Nora opened her door to head out for groceries 2 days later, she flinched. Gavin stood in the hall, eyes locked on hers, as if he'd been waiting for this exact second. She moved to shut the door by reflex, but he stepped forward, stopping it with one firm hand. He didn't push or crowd her. He just set himself in the space and waited. His presence filled the small frame like a storm held still. "What are you doing here?" she asked, hating the shake in her voice. "Fixing this," he said. "There's nothing to fix," she replied, looking past him. "There is," he said quietly. "You heard Ryan that night." She meant to deny it, but her face told the truth. She turned away. "It doesn't matter." "The hell it doesn't." His voice was raw now, edges he usually kept polished showing through. "You think I helped you because I pitied you?" She stared at the floor. "Didn't you?" The silence stretched for 2 beats and then broke. "No," he said, steady and clear. "I have never pitied you. Not once. I've never looked at you and thought you were weak. I think you are the strongest person I know." Her throat burned. "Then why?" she asked, whispering. "Why did you say it was complicated?" He stepped closer, not touching, but near enough that she could see the tight grief in his eyes. "Because I was trying not to punch my friend in the face," he said, honest and blunt. "Because people like Ryan make messes and call it fun. Because I didn't want to make it worse by shouting where everyone could hear. I should have told him to shut up right then. I didn't. That's on me." She closed her eyes. Hearing him say it like that sent relief through her so fast it scared her. But old fear still clung to her ribs. "I don't want to be someone's responsibility," she said. "I won't be that." His gaze softened. "You're not," he said. He ran a hand through his hair, struggled for a second, then said the truest thing he had. "I don't want to save you, Nora. I want to stand next to you. I want to be with you, not because I can hand you a better life, but because I can share mine with you, because I want yours, too." The words hit harder than shouting would have. Simple, clean, no pity hidden inside. The apartment seemed to hold its breath. The fridge hummed. A car passed outside. Nora's heartbeat slowed enough for her to feel each thump. She had trained herself to do everything alone, to accept help meant a debt, and debts trap you. To accept love meant the ground could vanish. But Gavin had never made her small. He had never tried to change her or shape her into something easier. He had just shown up when she needed an extra pair of hands, and then stepped back when she had it. He had seen her, the way she carried weight most people never noticed, and he never once called her broken. Now he was offering something she had never dared to reach for, a choice built on respect. He watched her carefully, as if any sudden move might send her running. "I know my world looks different from yours," he said softly. "I don't care about any of that. I care about you." Her fingers curled at her sides. "What if I don't fit?" she asked. "Then we'll build a life that does," he answered, just as soft. No fairy tale fixes. No promises to erase every hard thing. Just a hand outstretched and a vow to stay. Tears burned the corners of her eyes before she could stop them. He lifted one hand and waited, asking without words if he could take hers. She let him. The simple contact felt steady and warm. "You don't have to do this alone anymore," he said. She believed him, just enough to try. The sky cleared after long, slow rain by the time they stepped outside together. The air smelled washed and new. Nora glanced up at him with a small, careful smile. "So what now?" she asked. He chuckled under his breath and laced his fingers with hers. "Whatever you want." For the first time in a very long time, she wasn't afraid of wanting more. Not because she expected him to carry her. Because she finally understood she didn't have to. Carry everything by herself. Work felt different after that talk. Not like a secret, but like a steady line running between them. They kept it quiet on the floor. No one needed a show. But the rhythm shifted in small ways Nora felt in her bones. Gavin still watched the room like a conductor, but when his gaze paused on her, it wasn't guarded. It was proud. Nora worked the way she always had, fast and precise, with a soft patience for people who needed it and a steel backbone for those who didn't. She was still Nora, only now. When the weight grew heavy, she let herself breathe, and sometimes it looked like accepting a coffee she hadn't made or a joke whispered under the noise that loosened her shoulders. It looked like walking out to the alley during break and finding him leaning beside her, saying nothing, just sharing the quiet. Of course, nothing stays smooth for long. Rumors have a way of finding cracks to drip through, and a whisper made its way across the staff room one night that Nora didn't see coming. A vendor dropped a tray, a manager snapped, and someone muttered from the corner, "Well, she gets special treatment." The words weren't meant for her, but they landed anyway. Nora stiffened, the old urge to armor up rising fast. Gavin heard, crossed the room, and handled it with the same calm he'd used on rude guests 100 times. "We do not tear down our own," he said, voice quiet but final. "Everyone earns their place here." He didn't look at Nora when he said it. He didn't need to. The edge faded from the room. Later, in the hall, she paused at his side. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "I know," he replied. "I wanted to." She held his eyes for a beat, then nodded and kept moving. Respect, not rescue. That was the difference. She could live with that. One evening, an hour before close, the dining room turned into a storm. 2 large parties seated at once, a couple celebrating loudly, a dropping critic at the bar the host recognized by the tilt of her hat. Orders stacked. Glassware chimed. A small misfire in the kitchen sent a ripple across the line. Nora felt the press and did what she always did. Moved faster. She floated between tables, refilled, reassured, recalibrated. And there he was, just out of her way, reading the room in parallel. He stepped into a tense table with a polite apology and a flawless amuse-bouche he fetched himself. He caught a wobbling tray from a new hire with a steady hand and a note of thanks that left the kid smiling instead of shaken. At the tail end of the chaos, Nora felt his hand brush the small of her back, not possessive, not claiming, just a point of contact that said, "I'm here." She didn't look back, but the line of her shoulders eased. A week later, Nora had to leave mid-shift. Leo had spiked a fever at school and her mom couldn't get there fast. She barely got the words out to the floor lead before she was moving. Gavin appeared like he'd been called. "Go," he said, already pulling out his keys. "I'll drive." She hesitated for half a second and then nodded. The whole ride, she watched clock, knee bouncing. He didn't talk to fill the space. He just got her there fast, waited in the car while she ran in, then texted that he'd be right outside if she needed a ride to the pharmacy. After Leo settled and the panic drained away, she stepped back out to the curb and found him still there, engine idling, one elbow on the wheel, like it was the most normal thing in the world to wait for someone else's family. "You didn't have to stay," she said. "I know," he answered again. "I wanted to." He drove her to pick up medicine, and then back home, no questions asked. Respect, not rescue. She felt the difference like a new kind of strength. It would be easy to say that solved everything. Life doesn't work like that. Money was still tight. Her mom still had bad days. Leo still needed help with homework and rides to practice and comfort when he woke up from nightmares about losing people. Work still had long nights and aching feet. But something had shifted in Nora that made the weight less crushing. Trust, once a rumor, was becoming a fact she could lean on. She started to believe that letting someone in didn't make her weak. It made her brave. One late evening, the city wrapped itself in a soft breeze and the quiet hum that comes when most people are already home. Nora locked the back door, shrugging into her jacket, and found Gavin waiting by the alley where the light spilled in a pale triangle. He wasn't in a suit for once, just sleeves rolled and tired eyes. "Walk?" he asked. She nodded. They moved in step without thinking, sneakers and dress shoes tapping a steady rhythm on the old sidewalk. He told her a story from his early days, how he washed dishes in a place that would never have seated him back then, how he learned every angle of a dining room by scrubbing its corners. She told him about the first time Leo beat her at a board game, how she pretended to be mad while she was really proud. They laughed in small places and let the quiet fill the rest. Halfway down the block, he stopped, hands in his pockets like he was holding himself still. "I keep thinking about that night in the car," he said. "How I asked you to tell me to stop." She looked up at him. "You did," she said quietly. "And I didn't." He nodded. "I want that to always be true," he said. "If you ever want me to stop anything, I will. You say it once, and I'm done." The promise landed with the weight of something she'd been missing her whole life. Control she didn't have to fight for. She stepped closer, tipped her chin up, and kissed him under a sleepy street lamp. Not because the night asked for a movie moment, because she wanted to, because she chose it. Back at her building, they paused at the steps. "Tomorrow's going to be heavy," she said, thinking of her mom's next appointment and the shift she couldn't afford to miss. "I know," he replied. "I'll be around." She smiled, small and real. "Good night, Gavin." "Good night, Nora." He waited until she was inside before he turned away. What came next would test them both. Misunderstandings have a way of circling back, and people like Ryan don't let messy fun go quietly. But Nora had learned something important. Love wasn't about being rescued. It was about having someone beside you when the rain started again. And Gavin had learned something too. Care wasn't complicated. It was simple if you told the truth out loud and kept showing up. The storm wasn't over, but they were ready to face it. Together, morning stretched pale and quiet over the city, the kind of soft light that makes everything feel possible. Nora woke before her alarm, lying still in the calm she hadn't felt in years. It wasn't that her problems had vanished. Rent still waited. Her mom still had tough days. Leo still needed her after school. But something had changed inside her chest, like a door cracked open to fresh air. She made breakfast, checked on her mom, and packed Leo's lunch. When she stepped outside, the street smelled clean from a night breeze. She caught herself smiling at nothing and shook her head, amused at the unfamiliar warmth settling in her bones. At work, the dining room buzzed with the usual hum. Clink of glassware, low laughs, kitchen orders called in time. Nora moved through it with the same steady pace, but now her breath didn't sit tight in her throat. She didn't flinch when a problem surfaced. She handled it, then let it go. If her eyes drifted across the room and found Gavin watching, a flicker passed between them. Just enough to say, "I'm here." They didn't make a display of it. They didn't have to. The truth had a way of glowing on its own. Days stacked up with a quiet rhythm that felt new. Nora still did the opening tasks no one fought for, still grabbed a dish tub when it needed clearing, still stayed 10 minutes late if the host looked stressed. But she also learned to accept small kindnesses, without turning them into battles. A co-worker offered to split a heavy section. She said thanks and meant it. A line cook slipped her an extra roll on a rough day. She smiled instead of pushing it back. When the floor lead needed someone to talk down an angry table, Nora stepped up. Not because she wanted praise, but because she was good at staying calm when others sparked. Later, in the hall near dry storage, Gavin would glance her way with a look that said he'd noticed, then go right on with his list. Respect, not rescue. she could live in that space. One evening, a storm crawled in from the edge of the skyline, big clouds folding over the city until the streets turned silver dark. Wind rattled the awning out front, and rain began to drum on the glass. Inside, candles flickered on the tables and made the room glow. Nora felt a familiar tug in her chest. The memory of that first rainy night in Gavin's car, where something delicate and sure had clicked into place. When service ended, staff broke down stations and reset for the next day. Nora slipped on her jacket and found him waiting near the host stand, hands in his pockets, tie undone like he'd let himself breathe at last. "I'll walk you," he said. She hesitated an instant, old habit, then nodded. They stepped into the rain beneath a small umbrella he held so it covered her slightly more than him. She rolled her eyes at that, but didn't move away. Water hissed in the gutters. The city glowed in soft reflections. They didn't talk much. They didn't need to. On her stoop, he paused, like he was measuring the space between what had been and what could be. "How's your mom?" he asked quietly. "Better today?" Nora said. "Some days are rough. Today was okay." He nodded, taking the answer as it was, not trying to smooth it with empty promises. "I'm glad," he said. She lingered, fingertips resting on the chipped railing. "Thank you for showing up," she said. The words felt small for what they meant. "Always," he answered. He wasn't trying to sound perfect. He was just telling the truth out loud. It didn't take long for people around them to sense a shift. Most co-workers let it be, because the floor ran well and Nora pulled her weight. A few whispered, but the restaurant had its own rules, and Gavin made one thing clear. Everyone earned their place with work, not rumors. When a snide comment floated up again, soft, careless, the kind that cuts more because it pretends not to, Gavin handled it with a level voice that left no debris behind. "We support each other here," he said. "That's the standard." He didn't look to Nora for approval. He set the tone for everyone, then went back to service. Later, when they crossed paths by the walk-in, she tipped her head in a quiet thanks. "You set the bar high," she said. "You help hold it up," he replied. The exchange was simple, but it felt like a promise in motion. At home, life kept asking for all the usual courage. Bills still had due dates. The cough came and went. Leo needed help building a volcano for science, and a steady hand when the papier-mâché collapsed on the first try. Nora laid out old newspapers and mixed pace while he read directions out loud, stumbling over long words and then standing taller when he got them right. She laughed when the fake lava splashed the counter and took a picture, so he would remember that the mess was part of the win. Later, after homework and tea, she stood at the window and watched the city glitter through the rain. The old ache was still there, but smaller now, like an echo. Her phone lit up with a short text. "Got home safe?" She smiled and typed back, "Yes." "You?" A beat later, "Yes. Proud of you today." Her chest warmed. She didn't need the words to keep moving, but they didn't make her weak. They made the road easier to walk. One Saturday, the restaurant hosted a private dinner. The room wore its best light. Soft music threaded through low chatter. Nora floated table to table, steady as a tide. A guest snapped his fingers for attention. She breathed, smiled, and met him with care that did not bend her spine. Another guest praised the pacing. A third declared the bread perfect 3 times in a row. The kitchen ran like a heartbeat. When a small problem popped, a missing allergy note, Nora caught it, fixed it, and kept it to herself the way professionals do. From the far side, she felt Gavin's glance touch her and move on. Pride, pure and quiet. After the last plate left the pass, she ducked into the back hall for a moment to roll her shoulders. He found her there, leaning against the wall like he belonged in that exact spot. "You good?" he asked. "I am," she said. "Tired." "Good." He nodded and reached into his pocket. "You left this at the host stand," he said, holding out the small bracelet Leo had woven for her from bright threads. "Wouldn't want to face your brother if I lost it." She took it, laugh catching in her throat. "He'd put you on the banned list." "That would be tragic," he said. It wasn't a grand moment. It didn't need to be. It was life, steady and kind. They didn't pretend the gap between their worlds didn't exist. Money changes how problems feel. Names open doors or keep them shut. But the way they met that truth mattered. When Gavin offered to cover a bill, Nora said no, and he didn't push. When he asked how he could help while staying on her side of the line, she told him. Rides and emergencies, a hand with errands, time with Leo that looked like normal, not charity. He listened and did exactly that. Some evenings, they ordered cheap takeout and ate in her small kitchen, knees bumping, laughing at a silly show Leo loved. Other nights, they walked the park path after dark and let their hands find each other without thinking, under a street lamp. He told her stories of his childhood that surprised her, how he used to study restaurant maps like blueprints, how he saved for his first set of knives, how he felt out of place in rooms where he was expected to feel at home. She told him how she learned to fix her bike with a butter knife and grit, how she stayed late to clean at her first job, so the morning crew would start easier, how scared she was the night her mom first coughed hard and didn't stop. He didn't try to erase the fear. He held it with her for a minute, and in that small, quiet space, the weight changed. Then came the night the power flickered in her building. A transformer blew down the block, and the lights went dark with a sigh. For a second, silence pressed in. Then neighbors called each other to the hall, voices careful and warm. Nora lit 2 candles and placed them on the table. Leo thought it was exciting. Her mom reached for a blanket. Nora checked on them both and texted the landlord, then stepped into the doorway to gauge how long the blackout might last. Rain misted the street, turning the air cool and bright in the candlelit windows. She felt the prickle of worry, food in the fridge, her mom's medicine schedule start to rise. Her phone buzzed. Outside, she looked down the stairs and saw Gavin on the sidewalk with a grocery tote and a small lantern. "I brought ice and batteries," he said when she opened the door. "And that soup you like." She wanted to say you didn't have to. He cut her off with a gentle grin. "I know," he said. "I wanted to." She let him in. Together they moved through the small space, steady and simple, packing the most important things into a cooler, setting the lantern on the table, making sure the stove was off, heating soup on a camping burner he'd toss in the tote, because he knows her building. None of it was dramatic. All of it was love. When the lights blinked back on an hour later, cheers rose from the hallway. Leo hooped and ran to switch on his dinosaur lamp. Nora leaned against the counter and let out the breath she'd held. Gavin watched her with a look that said he understood the shape of her relief. He didn't ask for a reward for helping. He reached for her hand entwined, their fingers together, calm and sure. She squeezed back. The room hummed, nothing fancy, everything real. "You're getting good at this," she said. "What emergency soup?" he teased. "Showing up," she said. His face softened. "I told you," he said. "I'm not going anywhere." Not long after, a clear afternoon arrived with the kind of blue sky that makes even the brickwork look bright. The 3 of them, Nora, Gavin, and Leo, took the bus to the park with bags of sandwiches and a cheap kite Leo had begged for. The grass glowed thick and green. People laughed. Dogs strained at leashes. The kite dove and danced. Leo yelled and ran. Nora's laughter rang out, surprised and free. Gavin held the spool when Leo's arms tired. Let the boy teach him all the rules he'd just made up, and pretended not to know a thing about wind. Later, they ate on the grass while clouds drifted like slow ships. It wasn't a fancy lunch with crystal glasses. It was better. It was simple and true. As weeks turned into a new season, Nora learned a final lesson she hadn't expected. Strength isn't just about standing alone. It's also about letting someone stand with you and not apologizing for needing that. Accepting care didn't take away her grit. It sharpened it. And Gavin learned that love doesn't live in the grand gestures. It grows in the easy habits that say, "I see you again and again." He didn't have to change Nora to fit his life. He had to make space in his life where she already stood. One evening, as the sun settled low and the city dropped into that golden hush, they walked home side by side. No storm chased them. No crisis waited around the corner. Just the soft press of normal. At the top of her steps, she turned and met his eyes. "When you first stepped into my life," she said, "I thought you were trouble." He smiled. "I was," he said. "I am." "Yeah," she laughed, "but the right kind. He brushed a stray curl from her cheek. "Tell me to stop," he whispered, half a memory, half a promise. She shook her head. "Not a chance." Love, it turned out, wasn't about money, status, or saving someone from their own story. It was about choosing each other in the middle of all the mess. Nora had spent years believing the only way to be strong was to carry everything alone. Now she knew real strength also meant letting herself be held. And sometimes the most unexpected moments, a crash on a gray evening, a quiet offer in a hallway, a hand steady on your back when the room gets loud, can open a door you didn't know you were allowed to walk through. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Soul Stirring Stories for more moving, unforgettable tales. Turn on notifications so you never miss a story that might change how you see love, grit, and the strange ways fate brings people together. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next heartwarming story.